talk about the effect on the consumer and on business, let's look at it from a different perspective. You know, the state requires revenue to function as well, to conduct its business. As a state representative, one of your legislative responsibilities is to help craft a budget for the state of Ohio. If coal production in the state continues to suffer more, what would be the effect on state revenues and on the budget? What would have to be done to counter the effects of the diminished revenues?
Well, it's a huge impact. I don't have a specific figure for you, Congressman, but I think, you know, again, it's a reliable source. We count on the jobs that it generates. We count on the jobs that it facilitates when we have inexpensive energy in the state of Ohio. And you eliminate that component of coal. Obviously, we're excited about some of the shale things that are going on right now, but you also need a competition between the two. You need that vibrant market that keeps rates down, keeps them cost effective. And so our budget is additional uncertainty for our budget, obviously, if we're shutting down those plants because of the income tax that it generates, the sales tax that it generates. There's so much investment. We talked about those 11 additional jobs that each coal job relates to and creates and supports. So we need that basic undergirding of the economy, or else Ohio's going to be in desperate straits. And it was a struggle this year to try and solve an $8 billion budget hole. It's going to get a lot tougher if we don't have coal as an inexpensive energy source in Ohio, because it impacts throughout the entire economy.
Because it's actually a trickle-down effect. It's not just the income taxes that the coal operators provide and the coal mining operations themselves provide, but it's also the manufacturing companies that are dependent upon energy that will shut down as a result of not having affordable energy. I mean, it's a really big impact.
It's heavy equipment manufacturers, they count on the coal industry, trucking companies, the people that provide equipment, clothing, housing, everything else. It's vitally important, and the sense of uncertainty in eastern Ohio is really strong right now. And I understand it. I mean, it's heartbreaking to hear about people who are being laid off, and we talked about Monroe County as well. Ormet is a critical component there. Beyond Ormet, there's not a lot going on there that's positive economically, and we want to see them continue and be strengthened.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me for just one more question. Mr. Ahern, if regulations prevent or seriously limit a co-op from burning coal, how will the underserved in rural areas like we represent here along the Ohio River, how will they receive their electricity?
Well, it would probably be from other sources that are likely to be more expensive.
Okay, so you're talking about people that are already struggling day to day, unemployment in many places still in double digits, and yet they're going to have to pay higher utility rates to power their homes, and it's even going to have a further crippling effect on those businesses that operate in those rural areas, because as their cost to provide power to their manufacturing and business operations, they're going to have to probably lose people, not hire people, correct?
Chairman Jordan and Representative Johnson, I think, right now natural gas is relatively inexpensive, and it is helping to hold down electricity prices. But once people turn away from coal, and the only reasonable place you can turn to for base load generation is natural gas. Natural gas prices are going to rise significantly, and it is going to raise electricity prices for Ohio and many other areas of the country. They're going to see significant price increases. And as Mr. Hodenbolsky has already mentioned, we're going to lose some generating capacity that with today's very low natural gas prices, nobody will build anything today. You won't build a combustion turbine at today's low wholesale power prices because of low natural gas prices. And so we're going to line the spring and do nothing. And then when that spring lets go, we're not going to have enough electricity, and it is going to drive up the price, and people are going to feel it, businesses are going to feel it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. In your questioning, you brought out the jobs that are associated with the coal industry, the positive impact that has on communities and school districts, and we'd like to recognize one gentleman who's also with us. I see Mr. Murray is with us, and Murray Energy, and of course, they employ a lot of folks and have a lot of positive impact on the economy. countless number of communities across this state and across the country, so we appreciate him being with us today. And with that, I would recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you all for being here. One of the things that I was looking at, and when we walked in, I walked in with one of the gentlemen that's in the industry. Because we take for granted this idea that you just flip the switch and the lights come on. You can hit the switch at night and the air conditioning comes on, and in the winter you just up the thermostat a little bit and the house gets warmer and the lights get lit. The fragility, though, of this grid and the inability to keep it at a level, the base load. Any of you, please explain that, because I think hearings like this are great because the general public doesn't understand how fragile this is. We start talking about brownouts and blackouts. The fact that we haven't had any absolutely amazes me right now, what we've been doing. But just the startup, you just can't start them back up again. Once these plants shut down, you don't start it back up again that easy. Am I right or wrong on that? And any of you can answer. You all are very... Mr. Rager.
Yes. Chairman Jordan, Representative Kelly, yeah, you're right. The grid it's not a real stable system in terms of it doesn't tolerate upsets very well. And a great example of that is August of 2003 when there was a disruption due to problems in northern Ohio, and we ended up with a blackout that blacked out 55 million people that went from Ohio to Michigan, around the north side of Lake Erie, across upstate New York, and down to New York City. So the grid is very, it is not self-correcting in that way. You've got to maintain the voltage, you've got to maintain the frequency to keep it stable.
Interesting, then. Yeah. So the importance of the grid, and we all agree how critical it is. We put $16 billion in green energy. How much of an investment have we made in the grid? Is there any emphasis on it? See, I never hear that. I always hear about renewables and the way we're going to go with renewables. That seems to be the push that this administration has.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Kelly, one of the things I think that is not really appreciated broadly is that the only reason the grid is there is because it is being maintained. The idea that we have an antiquated infrastructure, I reject that idea. There is, it's cared for, it's taken care of. Sure, we've seen deficiencies, but there, you've got FERC, you've got NERC, you've got state commissions, you've got the individuals, utilities themselves, you've got regional transmission organizations, and for Ohio, you've got PJM. There's a tremendous amount of focus going on to maintain the grid. Now, one of the things that the Green Agenda is doing that is going to present challenges to the grid is that the two major sources of power that they seem to strongly advocate are wind and solar, and they're intermittent resources that they can come up quickly, but more importantly, they can come down quickly. Clouds can shield a solar field, the wind can die off rather quickly, and those dramatic changes, the rest of the grid has to really hustle to keep the voltage and the current in line. Otherwise, the system will go unstable, as the blackout of 2003 shows, the blackout of 1965, and other regional blackouts that have occurred.
It's amazing to me. We rely on sun that may not shine and wind that may not blow, and then we turn our back on all the other stuff we know, which is right beneath the surface. And that is really amazing to me. That an administration that many people would say these are the smartest guys. Well, I don't know, when you run a business 1.7 trillion in the red every year, I don't know that I go to any of those guys for any business advice. One of the things I do want to point out, and I think you'd all agree with, while we face a global market that's out there for us, we may never ever get to a point where we can compete on an hourly wage, but we can compete when our energy costs are lower than every other place in the world. So while you have wages that allow us to have a sustainable life form and a way of life that we like, we can offset it by lower energy costs, can't we not? I mean, that's part of the formula of what drives the cost of a product, either up or down. And I look at this and I say, you know what, if we're ever in a fair fight, shame on us. With what we have at our disposal, and we put our men and women in a situation where they can't absolutely blow everybody else away, what are we thinking about? This is not the type of a country that I know and how it grew into its greatness. We have it, it's here, I said earlier, it's affordable, it's abundant, and it's accessible, why in the world would we ever turn our back on what we know and how we can offset the rising cost of wages that our people need and put ourselves in jeopardy? It makes absolutely no sense. Mr. Mako, I know that your company is doing a great job, Mr. Murray's company is doing a great job. Why is there this war on coal? Why?
I have no understanding. It makes no sense to me. It's all over a phony CO2 issue, which I mentioned in my speech that, you know, my greenhouse customer totally disproves the science. And I don't understand. But I do know that all these plants they wanted to close, you know, right now,